Hello and welcome once again to the How Long to Beat podcast. I'm Rick, joined as always by Alex.
Hey.
And Paula.
Hey.
I'm so glad that you both went along with that because that's not something we've ever done. This week, as of the time of recording, I've just had COVID jab number 2. Bill says to tell you everything's fine. It's all good. Please go and get it. This week, we're going to talk about what we've beaten, by which I mean what Alex has beaten. We're not going to talk about what we've retired because we haven't. We're going to get on to what we've been playing this week. And hopefully my lovely co-hosts have played more than me because I've not played very much. And then we're going to get on to an unusual topic, food. Food in games. What is food? How food be? And then I'd like to think this week we'll have time for a community question. And we'll finish off, as we always, with the one and only
How long to beat
the game.
The game.
Nice.
Wonderful stuff. Rightio, Alex.
Yeah. All right.
There's no one else to go to at this point, really, is there?
Yeah, I know. I'm the only one who's beaten. So you were right, Rick, last week when you mentioned that I'd probably have Wasteland 3 beaten by the next time we played, because I have indeed completed Wasteland 3. And this game's great. Like, this is a solid 9 out of 10 for me, you know? Like the only reason I wouldn't give it maybe a perfect 10 is it's just there are a few little bugs here and there. They're not performance ruining or anything. It's just little things once in a while where you're like, oh, that was slightly jarring.
Bugs would survive the Wasteland though. Like cockroaches are hardy little fuckers.
Oh, you're funny. Yeah. But since it comes from the original Fallout devs, and considering the state of Fallout, it sort of makes sense that there's a few bugs. That just seems to be how these series work. But this game was fantastic. I did everything in this game. Now, everything in a playthrough, right? All the side missions on all quest stuff, because there are multiple ways that the game can end. And I got what is traditionally seen as the good ending. And I agree that I think it is. There's no ending that doesn't have caveats to it, but that's also because in this world, there's no way to get for something to just be perfect, right? You can't unite the entire wasteland under you know what I mean? It's there are people with competing views on how things should happen in this world and in Colorado, and you have to manage your expectations with that and decide what are your priorities. So ultimately I decided my priorities, the way the game starts, it's the very beginning, it's an awesome opening, is you're coming from Arizona, because that's where the other two games I believe were set, and that's where the Rangers first come from, is Arizona, and you're coming to Colorado to get the help of the Patriarch, who's this guy who's basically kind of the ruling kind of king, essentially the Patriarch of Colorado, and he's offering help to the Arizona Rangers. And when you arrive, you get ambushed right away, not by the Patriarch, but by these other dudes called the Dorseys. And it's an awesome start to a game. I remember when I first started, I was like, holy shit, this is pretty cool. And so everyone's basically just wiped out, and so you have to decide who are you going to work for? Are you going to sow chaos in Colorado, or are you going to stick to your mission to help with the Rangers back home? And so I decided to stick to my mission, and I'm glad I did, because it is a really good ending. And I'm also glad, so I probably did this a little backwards, or I probably should have just waited one more month, because the Colorado collection is coming out on October 5th, which is all of the DLC along with some new DLC, and it's on Game Pass. But this was also on Game Pass, but I was like, that's fine, because really it added other DLC, different weapons and stuff. But I might be a little weird where I actually don't like when games have these special DLC weapons that much, because they always feel slightly game breaky if they're not actual expansions. You know what I mean?
Throws the balance off. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. I like to just sort of play the game as it was intended and go that way. And so that's kind of what I did. But I what I'm hoping is that when that Colorado collection comes out, and you've got the because the Battle of Steeltown is the one that's out right now, and that one's not on Game Pass yet, but I believe in the Colorado collection it will be. I'm hoping that I'll be able to just transfer my save over and play that way. And then there's a new... I
was going to see that DLC's all post game then.
Yeah, it's all post game. Well, I don't know if the Battle for Steeltown is necessarily you might be able to play partway through. I think both of them you can play post game, that is the thing. But if you play the game normally, I think they show up at certain points,
right,
for you to do it. Yeah, but I wanted to basically, I was I kind of want to beat this game a bit before it comes out, so that when I then go to play it, it's a nice treat. You know what I mean? Because I actually felt the game was perfectly paced and had the exact right amount. Like when I came to the end of it, I was like, yeah, I'm ready to be done. You know what I mean? Like, and not like in a bad way. I was just like, yep, I've done everything. I've got wicked armor. I've like maxed out my team pretty much to the point that I want them to be. I feel good about this. I don't really want to go and, you know, do a whole bunch more stuff, right? Like at that point, it would maybe feel like kind of like too much extra. So yeah, really beautifully paced. And I'm really looking forward though to digging into those 2 DLC things. I think the new Wasteland DLC, the next one coming out, Cult of the Holy Detonation, which is awesome. Yeah. There's a group who are obsessed with, because like, remember there's like, you know, fucking nuclear apocalypse that hit down.
They'll go out wearing Yeezys. I get the sort of the idea. In the spirit of this show, how long did it take you to beat the game? Because you said it was the perfect
40
length.
hours. And that's doing everything. Like that was doing all the side quests, and I was taking my time. Like that wasn't even me like, you know, bum rushing through it. I'm sure you could cut like a solid 10 hours out of that if you were just going like through the main story. But honestly, the thing is, like, they've really set it up well where like the side missions, look, half of the side missions feel like main missions. Like I honestly felt like the side mission versus main mission distinction was almost meaningless. You know what I mean? Like there were some that, yeah, there were definitely side missions where you're just kind of doing a little thing, but like most of them were like addendums to the main mission, right? It was like, hey, you could go do this, which is actually going to make your main mission a lot easier for you, or you could try and be a dumbass and go through the main mission. You're probably going to get a worse outcome, but you can do it if you want, right? Like they're giving you that choice, which I really appreciated. In fact, like one of the last missions, you basically unlock like 2 or 3 side missions as you're doing the last mission that allow you to like undermine this person you're going after. And it's really cool. Like, it's just like, I don't know, it just feels fun, and like you feel smart and you feel like you're just having a good time, and you're playing like politics in this world. Of course, though, most of the politics means go kill everybody. Because, you know, it is a real-time strategy game, right? So, but it's really great. See, this is why I'm actually excited for the Cult of the Holy Detonation, because apparently they're switching things up. Like usually the Wasteland 3 gameplay kind of loop is like go in, you enter into combat, eliminate everyone, combat ends. But in the DLC, they're actually switching it up so that you have different objectives within it, so that sometimes actually eliminating everyone is not your goal, and or might be nearly impossible to eliminate everyone. So like you actually have to go do this thing. It's like I'm really excited for that, because it sounds like they're going to play even more with the world that they've created. So yeah, I don't know. I really, really liked this game. It's not super strong in its character front, I'll say, and that like it is and it isn't, because realistically you create like two heroes at the beginning, right? That's how you start the game. And I picked the 2 characters, Yuri and Spence, which I highly recommend these 2 characters if you're starting. You can create your own, but like if you've never played a Wasteland game, or even like just kind of games like this, don't try to make your own, right? Like it's way better. The team has made it so that they're like, these are good to start with. You'll have fun with these, and it's very true. But like there's a lot of ways to customize things. And like in general in the game, like what I ended up having was I had a guy who was like, my main guy was good with automatic weapons. He was really good. He had like a hard ass skill, so he could do like, you know, checks and whatnot. And he had some other skill. Like basically each of my rangers had about 3 skills out of the like, you know, 16 or so skills that exist. Sometimes 4, depends. And like, so I'd have like that. I had a healer who was also like a brawler, like fisticuffs, which is a really fun combination. And then I had like this guy who had like basically a flamethrower and an MG and could like hack computers and like fix and like hack robots and shit. And then you have like, what is it? A sniper, because, you know, gotta have a fucking sniper. Had a sneaky dude, you know, he's all sneaky and shit. And he uses SMGs. And then who else did I have? Oh yeah, and I had like a lady who was just like really good with her pistols. So it's like you find all of these like different combinations, and like they end up becoming really valuable to you, right, in varied ways. And so I really liked that, where it's like yeah, build a team, and there are different ways that you can build the team. There are different things that you can do, but yeah, it's a fucking kick-ass game, man. It's just a really fucking kick-ass game, and I played it free on Game Pass. Like I was like, holy shit, I feel like I'm cheating. I'm like actually kind of curious to try Wasteland 2. I don't think I'm gonna go back to Wasteland 1 because I hear it's pretty tough. But like I'm like a little intrigued about Wasteland 2. At the same time though, I feel like Wasteland 3 might be just such a like devs like kind of perfecting their what they're doing that I'm like, I don't think I even want to go back. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, I just love this. And I have to say, it makes me.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, it makes me extremely excited for inXile's next game because I know they're working on like a whole new RPG right now that I think is actually outside of the Wasteland kind of universe. And I don't know, seeing what they're able to do with this, I was like, yeah, I'm pumped. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Am I remembering rightly that Wasteland 1 is like the OG from 20, 30 years ago? Wasteland 2 was a Kickstarter game, and then Wasteland 3 was sort of made off the back of the success of Wasteland 2. Am I remembering that roughly right?
See, I think Wasteland 3 also was kickstarted. Or no, it was on Fig.
Okay.
It was on Fig. Remember,
what's that? Is
know.
that like
See,
a Kickstarter
that's how
equivalent?
Psychonauts 2 got started as well. I don't know.
That's like an investment platform if it's the same one. It's a weird one. Like you have some kind of ownership within the game somehow.
Yeah, basically. Because I know they had a backer thing on it as well. Like I remember seeing Wasteland, like when I was rolling the credits, there was like the normal credits and then there was the backer credits. Like they had to do all separate credits because there's so many backers.
Fig specifically is a game making investment thing. So its tagline is investing in games with Fig game shares.
But Wasteland 2 was on Kickstarter.
I remember that being one of like the glut of the Kickstarters that happened and one of the more successful ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because Wasteland 1 was 1988, right? So yeah, and then they went and remastered it, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But like, it's just, I don't know, it's so good. Like it feels like when you play it, like you're watching an alternative development path for the Fallout series, you know? Like it's like if the Fallout series had stuck closer to its roots, this is what it would be. And it's so cool that we have both of these, you know? Like I'm like, oh, it's so nice that these like both exist, even if I'm extremely depressed about the state of Fallout. But it is fine. They keep trying to get me into Fallout 76, and I was like, I would rather shoot off my left foot. So,
are you not intrigued about 4 times the world map, 16 times the detail?
How do you make something that people, you know, it's like that thing where everyone's like, oh man, like I want, but you know, it's not even true because Elder Scrolls Online is great, right? Everyone was like, I want Elder Scrolls, but honestly, Fallout to me never seemed like a game that was meant to be played with, like, you know what I mean? Anyway, I don't want to get into this, but like Elder Scrolls isn't about crazy choices, right? Elder Scrolls is about like a fun adventure, whereas Fallout is about like managing factions and like choices and like, you know what I mean? It's like that doesn't translate great to an online game, right? Like it makes sense in Elder Scrolls, but I don't know.
There is a way that it could have worked. I can envision a path when it could have worked. And if anyone wants to sort of deep cut and see me proven right by history, we talked about this very briefly back in season 1 of the podcast. And I said on the record, anyone who thinks adding netcode to the buggy mess that is Bethesda RPGs will make a better game is off their rocker. And I'm sad that I was proved right, but I absolutely was.
Yeah.
And speaking of off their rocker, shall we move on to what we're currently playing?
Yeah.
And take a dive into... In fact, let's not take a dive into Breath of the Wild.
I do want to say one thing about Wasteland 3. Invest in your animal whisperer skill because there is an animal you can get near the very end of the game that was a very popular animal on the internet circa like mid 2000s. And that's all I'll say on that part.
A cat?
No, not a cat. It's something else entirely. It's related to snakes and other things. But anyway, we'll keep going.
I was going to say let's go to the off the rocker adventures of Paula in Breath of the Wild, but it's not on your playing tab. Are you okay, Paula? What's going on?
Oh yeah, it's just that there wasn't like really anything like not worthy about my current playthrough on Breath of the Wild right now because I was running in homework, so usually when I play Breath of the Wild, I don't just do a couple of things. I usually lose myself in the game for a couple of hours.
There's playing and there's playing.
There's playing and there's playing. Like all the things I did were pretty much like item management, sell stuff for rupees, and pretty much like cook stuff for my adventure for showing. But yeah, hopefully I can jump back into Breath of the Wild and go back to collecting all those correct seeds soon-ish.
Corrupting. Even by my standards, that's
I'm sorry, Rick, but that was
horrid. Cut that. That doesn't need to stay in. Wow. I need a filter.
Yeah.
When
I'm embarrassed about one, you know it was bad.
Yeah. Wait, can you tell me a little bit, Paula? I'm curious. I just saw a new Pokemon Snap there. What?
Oh, yeah. So a little while before recording, I started new Pokemon Snap on the Nintendo Switch, and I'm just gotta say, I was like a very big fan of the original Pokemon stuff on the Nintendo 64. I actually think I played like last year again because I don't know, there's a lot of nostalgia attached to that particular game. The new Pokemon Snap takes the core of what was the original Pokemon Snap adventure and runs away with it. I love it because they have this kind of semblance of story, or like they give you a reason to start like photographing like all these Pokemon. So you have Professor Mirror, who is currently studying like the Pokemon in this lens region, and he very much wants you to take pictures of Pokemon at different like times of day, just to study them, because he is pretty much like trying to study Pokemon in their natural habitat. So you jump into this new one, I think was the name of the vehicle. And just as Todd from the original Pokemon Snap, you have to go into this on-rail thing and taking pictures of Pokemon. I thought the gameplay loop will get a little bit repetitive, but there's almost always something new to do. I'm still like in the opening hours of the game, but I already explored the original area, the first area of the game, twice. And the thing is, the area you visit kind of like levels up according of like how many pictures you took, how good are the pictures, and overall just by going there and taking pictures and interacting with the Pokemon, you get the experience points, and then you unlock more events on the same map. You can also explore the same area at night, and things are different. Even like when there's like the exact same groups of Pokemon that live in that area, they are either like sleeping, or for example, there was like a Noctowl that was like sleeping on inside a tree during the daytime, and it was just perched up in the same tree like during the nighttime. And there was also a Scorbunny running around, which, by the way, I need to photograph because of some of the missions or side quests they give you. Also, there's the thing about the game are the Lumina Pokemon, because there are like these special crystals that if certain Pokemon interact with them, they like become like all glowy. But the Lumina Pokemon have like very special patterns, and pretty much you want to follow them, take pictures of them, and bring them back to the professor so he can see like why these Pokemon glow the way they glow in the dark after interacting with this like weird mineral thing. So yeah, it has been a lot of fun. I also unlocked the thing that looks like an apple, but it is called a fluff fruit. Yeah, it looks like an apple, but it is way lighter. So I guess it's so you can still throw it at the Pokemon and not make it look like you're like hurting the Pokemon in any way.
Yeah, because it wasn't in like the first one you would literally just like whip fruit at their heads and like piss them off to get the shots.
I kind of like that.
You can in the first Pokemon game, you either lure Pokemon like to certain spots, like a Pikachu to a surfing board, so you can get like a picture of a Pikachu surfing, or a Pikachu towards an electrode, and then you have like this Pikachu like rolling the electrode around. But you can also like throw the apple to the electrode and make explode. No one is stopping you from doing that. And actually, an electrode that exploded and is fainted somehow gave you like more points than a healthy electrode. That was kind of like fucked up. So they say like, okay, you're not actually like damaging the Pokemon, and they love this treat, so they will be happy if you throw some at them. Very much is like the exact same thing, just like with kid-friendly flavor checks. Yep. So yeah, that's Pokemon Snap right now, and it looks gorgeous. Like even like in the tiny Switch screen, the game is one of the best-looking Nintendo Switch games I've seen.
Nice,
if not the best. I think it was Bandai Namco, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think it is Bandai Namco. They've been doing some great stuff with the Switch.
Yep. Oh, and there was like this awesome Easter egg, because like one of the first Pokemon you see on the original Pokemon Snap is a Dodo that comes like from the bushes and just like runs around the place. And here you see a Dodrio that is the evolved form. That was like a nice little callback. And the other nice little callback that is for like here, take some nostalgia here, is that you actually meet the original photographer from the original Pokemon stuff. And I saw that and it blew my mind. Like, just in the nostalgia, it was like, oh my god, it is that guy, it is that guy. And my boyfriend was just looking at my screen. He's like, oh, who's that guy? It is Todd from the original Pokemon stuff. Sorry, I'm gonna have to stop fangirling for a little bit and start talking about the other games. Otherwise, I'm just gonna stay in stop for a while.
Fair. Well, it sounds nice. I mean, I'm looking forward to playing that when it goes on sale someday.
I don't know if it's gonna go on sale.
All their other games these days have been going on sale. Like even the Mario games go on sale now. Like I know Nintendo used to be the no sale company, but they go on sale like often.
They're on sale until they're not on sale at all.
Yeah, there you go.
Pew, 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 pew.
Oh, a nice little thing about the new Pokemon Snap is that they are adding new content for free.
Nice.
So yeah, that pretty much blew my mind. Okay, moving on. I'm still playing Nightshade. I finally entered a character's route who is Hattori Hanzo. And the thing is that usually I would leave like my favorite character like for last. In this case, it is highly advised you do this route first because it will very much like give you like the overall picture of what the political scenario looks in this game. So then you can just focus on what's going on in the story, like on all the other routes. Not only that, but I think this route in particular is a lot like better written than most of the others. I really like it when there's character growth, like especially like from the main character of the story. And I think that this route in particular is the one that kind of gives Anju more room to grow and to improve and to actually like sort of achieve her dreams or like her goals. The only thing is, it really sucks that poor Anju was pretty much set up and now there's a lot of people after her life because everyone thinks she murdered the Emperor. Beautiful. Moving on to the next game, it's Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia. I already completed like Celica's part of the story and currently like Alm's path, if I want to say, of Act 4. And the thing is, it's very interesting how both armies are like balanced in a way that you don't feel stuck on a particular place because of how the enemy encounters are kind of like made with the makeup of both armies in mind. But I still like Celica's army best because she has a lot of mages, and as I previously stated, they pretty much bypass the entire like terrain mechanics, so they're pretty broken in this game. And Pegasus Knights are like super OP because you really want units that can move like through certain maps, like the deserts, because the sunlight really slows down your units, or like these poisonous swamps kind of map, because the Pegasus Knights are pretty much immune to that. But I only have one Pegasus Knights and like 2 mages on Alm's Route. No, 3 mages on Alm's Route. So this army in particular is more like a traditional Fire Emblem army, if I can explain it well, because it has like more of everything else. So it's pretty much like up to you, like, but you're pretty much gonna have like a very like physical oriented army on this part of the game. But still, I like how they made it so their individual like routes are like very well designed, so you don't feel like, oh, if only I had like the units from the other side of the map, maybe I could have won that. No, it's very balanced, so that's nice. Moving on to my next round is Amnesia later for the Vita. I pretty much like just went like through half of Waka's like routes, because I said like this character has like 4 routes depending on which world you want to travel to. Weird shit, I know. So I'm like halfway through. I completed 2. I have 2 to go, so that's Gucci. And finally, Ghost Trick.
Hey.
I met the best boy in the game. Missile is a bestest boy.
Oh, you're with Missile.
Missile is a very, very good boy. And that made me happy.
Missile is fantastic.
Still, yeah, Missile is fantastic. Poor boy. It's like, all I do well is just bark. So yeah.
So are you in the apartment right now? Is that like where you're at?
I just finished that section. I'm currently on chapter 3.
Oh, okay.
So I pretty much like sneak my way out of it like just now. So hopefully everything goes well. I don't fuck up the puzzles. Because I was pretty close to not getting the puzzle on the last chapter. But I did it.
Nice. The chapter 2 puzzle actually is like, when I look back at it now, like I think it's partially a harder puzzle, I think, because you're still figuring out how all this works. You know what I mean? Like it's like you haven't quite grasped like all the mechanics quite yet. So I find that one, even when I played it, it was the one that made me like, it took me a little while to be like, what the fuck am I doing wrong here? You know?
Yeah, like the thing that threw me off a bit is that I didn't notice, like, I guess the consequences of interacting with a particular object, something that spins. So I very much like bounced from one end of the apartment to the other and trying to figure out what was wrong, and then was like, oh yeah, this. Okay, never mind. But yeah, like so far, I don't think the game has been like unfair with the puzzles. So like they are pretty doable. Like you just have to remember like all the stuff you can do with it. If you forget, that's the problem. But so far, so good. So yeah, that's everything that I've been playing. Alex, do you want to take it away?
Well, I thought maybe Rick, why don't we since Rick's also playing Ghost Trick.
Yeah, it might actually be a good sort of segue while I'm in between muting and unmuting myself with bouts of coffee. Yeah, so to be fair, I haven't played much more of Ghost Trick. It's what I will say is it's living up to every positive memory I had of it, and it is still every bit the 10 out of 10 that I remembered it being, which is good because games don't always do that on a second visit, especially with sort of time out. But I feel like the greats of the DS really do sort of still live up. If it nailed it on the DS at the time, generally speaking, it still holds up when you come back to it nowadays, which is good. Even though I'm not on the DS anymore, I'm emulating it on a mobile phone. Shh, don't tell Daddy Nintendo.
we won't tell if you don't.
It's okay. Daddy Nintendo's like, wait, people still like the DS?
But it's not on Switch Online. How do they know that exists anymore? So I'm still playing Kine for PC. Nothing new to say about that. Ditto Valhalla on Vita. Ditto Wario Land 4 on the Game Boy Advance. I have got some more to say about Vagrant story, which I'm now, I think, past the halfway point of, more sort of the 2/3 kind of point. This game is really something. It's I wouldn't necessarily recommend people play it though, which is sort of a strange one because for better and in many cases for worse, it is very much a product of its time. This is a game with a focus on crafting, with a remarkably horribly tight limit on inventory that you can carry. Every menu takes a couple of seconds to click through, so using the boxes at most smithies and save points to sort of swap things in and out is tedious. Every menu has too many button clicks to do the things that you want to do in them. Instead of putting the map on select button, select like start takes you to a first person view of the surroundings because it's 3D now. What? And the game does look gorgeous, so I totally understand why they wanted to show that off. But they didn't need 2 buttons and all of the directions on the right analog stick to do it. They could have... Start button could have been it, and it would have been absolutely fine. But the game underneath it is really interesting. To recap, I don't know if I've talked about it before, it uses a risk mechanic. So as you use attacks and as you chain attacks into those attacks, your risk meter rises. The risk meter reduces your base percentage hit chance. It also increases your critical hit chance, albeit it does the former far more than it does the latter. So there's a weird sort of point on the learning curve of the game where for whichever weapon you're sort of getting used to using, you start to learn the timings of the chain attacks. But actually there's a meta decision to make, which is, do I want to chain with a disgustingly low hit chance? Do I want to just keep spamming single attacks so that the risk doesn't smash higher and higher and stay where I am? Or do I want to back off and either with an expendable item or by sort of staying away from the enemy, do I want to just let that meter drop? In bosses and against tougher enemies, those second and third options aren't especially viable. You essentially just have to hope that you can tank the risk out and or sort of use some of the items that diminish it a little bit. And there's lots of little instances like that. So there's lots of quirks within the combat system that you essentially have to learn your way around. And unfortunately, the way the game is broken is more often than not in the game's favor rather than in yours. So it's a weird one, but it also does so many things that I can't think of other times I've seen in the games, particularly in the combat. So most people sort of think of pressing a button at the right time of combat to be involved as a Super Mario RPG thing. I think Vagrant Story did it first. And if it didn't, it certainly did it different and did it in a way that I think is more engaging because there's so many more decisions to make with every button press or active decision not to press. Also, the actual things that happen like on a defensive button press, you have much more agency with. The story tackles a narrative that's very sort of deep and engaged, goes to some quite dark places. The way that it integrates puzzles is kind of weird, but it is, again, also not something that you just see in games generally. And as an overall thing, it's a fascinating playthrough. I'm personally very, very glad that I've made the time for it, having had it literally since I owned a PSP. So I've had it like from PSN for about a decade before I've even bothered to start it. But unless you're someone who, like me, has sort of seen the game in passing and found themselves intrigued by it or by the place in gaming history that it came from, like objectively, it's a 7 out of 10 game. And it's a good 7 out of 10. But similar to what we've said about many Metroidvanias in the past, there are so many excellent RPGs. It's a tricky one to recommend this over various other games unless you have a specific interest in it. But I am enjoying my time playing it. I've also enjoyed dipping back into Rocket League with the new Season 4, which dropped a couple of days ago at the time of recording. By the time this drops, it'll probably been out for a few weeks now. It's still Rocket League. It's still fantastic. I haven't gotten too rusty, which is always good. And I'm having a blast sort of dipping into it with podcasts on in the background with friends, that sort of thing. It's the game I know and love, and it the day it changes on me is the day that I leave this mortal coil, I think. Maybe trim that. That was a little bit over dramatic. Anyway, the last thing that I've been playing, and this is a new thing completely, is the Iki Island expansion to Ghost of Tsushima. I haven't gone very far. By all accounts, it's not a massive expansion. And to be fair, the map isn't huge, but I've really enjoyed revisiting the game and I've liked the gameplay that I've had so far. So the concept behind the DLC is that following the events of the main campaign, a scouting party of Mongols from nearby Iki Island appears on one corner of the map. They appear with a new enemy type called a shaman, which is like a buffing type enemy. So completely changes the way that you have to play the game because it's not a thing that the combat previously had. And the buff that it gives the enemies makes them attack relentlessly, which because of the way Tsushima's combat is set up, can really throw a spanner in the works if you let them subsist. Once you defeat that party, you find out about a character called the Eagle on the island, who's planning a psychological weapon-fueled attack on the island of Tsushima. So Jin resolves to set out and defeat the Eagle once and for all. The story is much more of a focus in what was already quite a story-heavy game. It throws a lot of new sort of little mechanics in the mix even this early. I particularly like the ability to use some of your resolve to make the horse charge through enemies because it makes the horse feel a little bit more involved in the combat in a way that they weren't previously. I think it's maybe a smidge weaker than the base game for me so far, but ultimately it's more Tsushima, and that is never going to be a bad thing. So I'm very much looking forward to finishing this, and I suspect this will be a Wasteland situation where it's absolutely going to be knocked out by the time we speak next. And that's it for me. Alex, tell us about what you've been playing.
Nice. I've been playing more of the same. Playing more Tomato Adventure, enjoying it. I'm going really slowly through this game. I'm sure I'll beat it, but it's just like, it's not a game you got to rush through, you know? It's fun. I kind of like haven't been playing it quite as much just because I have so many other like handheld games on the go, right? So like I've been playing a lot of Oracle of Seasons right now, which I'm absolutely loving. I think I just beat the 3rd dungeon. Going through it pretty quick. It's such a fun little game. And you know, interestingly, I thought that the menu swapping thing might bother me a little, but it's really not that annoying. Like, you know, like they designed it with that in mind, right? Like they knew you're going to have to open your menu up frequently. And like, it's so easy to swap things that like, it doesn't really matter, right? It's like you press start, you hit the button you want to switch the weapon to, done. You know, like there's no like frills, right? There's no like, you want to equip this, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it was clearly designed with them saying like, how can we as quickly as humanly possible get them into a menu and swap the weapon? And like, it works, you know?
The exact opposite of Vagrant Story.
Yeah, there you go, right? Like they just knew what they were doing with it. And it is funny though, I've been hearing like Dragon's been talking about this a little bit, like how he's always used to being able to like pick up pots and stuff. And that's so funny because I find that's such a holdover from like different Zelda games, like on different eras and stuff. But like as someone who like grew up really playing the Game Boy ones, like I always knew, I was like, nah, motherfucker, you can't pick up a big old pot like that, like a pot smaller than Link maybe, but the size of Link, you need something special. But it's so funny because like I do realize like this is what I was curious about. Like I'm curious about those who are coming to it, you know, from having played other Zelda games, because I think there are some unique quirks in it. Which also for me though is why I like them so much, because they do feel different. One of like the critiques I can sometimes have, but I don't even think Zelda games really do this, but some games and series will do this, where it's just like they're so consistently the same. But I think that's one of the strengths of Zelda games, is that like no, like they're actually quite different, like game to game. Oftentimes there'll be like a sequel that's slightly similar, right? Like you'll see pairings, like the DS Zelda games. You'll see things like, you know, Ocarina and Majora's Mask, Link's Awakening, and the Oracle games, right? Like they have like pairings that I think fit nicely together that will like share similar mechanics, but then they'll kind of just move on after that. And I really like that. Like we're seeing it too with Breath of the Wild. Like I'm certain after Breath of the Wild 2, they're going to move on to something new, right? Like that's just how they kind of work with. And I really like that concept of where it's like, okay, the first time you do it, it's like, was there anything on the cutting room floor that we want to try, or can we iterate on this in any other way? All right, let's make a second game. And then it's just like, put it to bed, you know, right? Maybe someday in the future we'll come back to these ideas, but like let's move on. And I don't know, like I think it's part of why people like got so fucking burnt out on the Assassin's Creed games. Like I loved them, but holy fuck, it was like, slow down. And I'm actually seeing it happen again now in a lot of ways. Like when I saw Valhalla come out, I was like, bro, there's no way in fucking hell I can play that game. Like I loved Odyssey so much, but I was like, are you shitting me, man? Another like 80-hour game in that world with it's going to be the same fucking thing? I can't do that. You can't. No, you already made a great game.
It's not the same. It's in England now.
I know, right? Yeah. And that's the thing where I'm just like, it's so weird because like Odyssey was so phenomenal, and then it's like, this is the problem, right? Like I remember playing Black Flag, and then it was like fucking Syndicate and them came out, and I was like, oh, I can't do that shit, man. No, you already made a phenomenal game. I'm done, right? Like I was like, you just check out. So I don't know. And maybe that's how Assassin's Creed works. Maybe you just have to not play 3 games in between and then come back later. But it's kind of sad, you know? Because the core game is good. But yeah, do you have some thoughts there, Paula?
Yeah, one of the things that I really love about Zelda, like as you say, like gameplay wise, you know, like how different they can be like from each other, like how different the combat can feel, or just moving around in the world. If you want to take like the example of Ocarina of Time versus Majora's Mask, like they run the same engine, but they have like the very different quirks. But they also like look very different from each other. And that's the other thing that I really love, because I can see a screenshot or a piece of concept art and I immediately know what game that is from.
Yeah, and you know, something that speaking of traversal, actually, that's something that I think is kind of interesting, because like this game has such different modes of traversal. Like at one point you're in a fucking kangaroo, right? Like you get pets that you can like go on and ride and like attack with, and I was like, it's just so like I'm riding a dinosaur at one point, you know? I'm like, this is dope. And you can't even like argue, like it's not like Link's Awakening where they're like, it's all a dream. You're like, no, this is it. This is real. And this is
for real.
And so I'm really enjoying it, and it's the perfect like sit and watch a TV show kind of game. Like lately I've been rewatching all of The Simpsons, and yes, I mean all of The Simpsons. I'm already like 100 episodes in or so. Yeah, look, I'm one of those people who says that The Simpsons has always been fine and is still fine. Is it amazing? No, it's never actually been amazing. It's always been good, and sometimes
it's had purple patches. I
don't really think so. Like when you actually go and look at an individual episode, they're fine. I just think we change, right? You get older, opinions on things change. The show tackles different subjects, but like there's always been weak episodes. There's always been really great episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not sure that like I don't know. I don't really think it's gotten like trash at all. Like maybe it's slightly less, but I don't know. I think people grew up in the 90s. I think that's just
familiarity breeds contempt, though, rather than like it's gone downhill so much.
Exactly, because it was always an insane show.
Mm-hmm.
Like even in like anyway, this is a whole other subject. But even in like the golden era of The Simpsons that people always point to, like you know, like the episode seasons 2 to 7 or something. There's episodes in there that are just so insane, and I love them. But they're as insane as the episodes nowadays. Anyway, regardless.
Side question: where do you find the time?
The time? To watch
to do all of this stuff.
Yeah,
I've smashed out a 40-hour. Also, by the way, I've watched 100 episodes of The Simpsons.
That's over like a couple months of The Simpsons.
Right? Okay, not this started in the past week.
Not in the past week.
Just follow the anime.
See, what I do is like I have a lot of really good concentrated time. That's my thing. Like I go hard. Like I pre-prep all my stuff. Like, cause like I teach, right, and I'm a student right now, so like I get all my shit done in like really intense chunks of time, and then that gives me free time to game and whatnot. I'm what one might call a keener, who wakes up at 6 a.m., goes to the gym and walks his dog, and then pounds out a day's worth of work before noon.
In high school, we called that Kino. In adulthood, I just call that someone who's got their shit together. To be fair,
Yeah.
Yep.
It's amazing how much you can
don't
get
get
done.
my shit together.
Yeah, but also something to be realistic too. Like I know Paula, like you've got family and whatnot that you're living with and stuff too, and like look, it's just me, my dog, and my partner, right? Like realistically, I have a lot of downtime, and like with COVID and whatnot, hanging out with friends has mostly been online or occasionally anything. So I'm envisioning actually my time to shrink very soon though, because I'll be starting a practicum in a high school in November, and so I'll be doing the 8 to 3 job, and I will be very busy.
you'll be working again.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right now I'm just like chilling. I work in the evenings, but it's not that intense. Anywho, that was what a tangent on Oracle of Seasons. So basically when I sit and watch The Simpsons, I play Oracle of Seasons. It's like my for an hour or two at night, relax, watch 3 episodes, chill out. What else am I playing? The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. I'm on the 3rd adventure now. Wow, this game does something extremely different. And I completely see why people in Japan didn't like this game when it came out. I love it, but I 100% see why people were like, what the fuck? I actually think the change is phenomenal, but we'll just say they do something that like I would say drastically changes the structure of Ace Attorney games. And for the better, because usually Ace Attorney games, I think they always have 1 or 2 cases that are kind of like, they're kind of fluff, like they're fun, but they're just sort of like fun side stories. You know what I mean? Like they don't
move the critical path forward.
Yep.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
and they're good, but they're there because you're kind of like, I need 5 episodes. You know what I mean? Whereas in this one, they've done something really interesting. Is this a spoiler? I don't know. If you're worried about structure of the 2nd episode of Ace Attorney, stop listening for 30 seconds. So there's no court case in the 2nd one. There's just none. It's deductions, and it's just the investigation phase, and it's doing the Sherlock deductions, and it's awesome.
Yeah. To be fair, like the deduction part kind of like reminded me of how in the investigations games you don't have a court case. You only have the investigations to go on, and you pretty much have to squeeze information out of everyone, like during those segments, and find contradictions and stuff like that. It's kind of like logic chess to an extent, but with very like not serious characters like H4 was.
Yeah, and I think you can expect something like that in that game, because it's called like Miles Edgeworth Investigation. You know what I mean? Like it's like whereas this one is like the Great Ace Attorney.
Mainline.
Yeah, like even though it's technically not mainline, it is technically a spin-off, but really it's mainline because it's Shu Takumi, right? Like it's like this is the main line. The B team makes the main line now. It's confusing.
Yeah.
But at first I was a little bit like, is it gonna be like because you're at sea in it, and I was like, is this gonna be like a Navy court? And then I was like, oh shit, there's just none. And I was like, that is refreshing actually. It made it concise. I felt like I got to get to know the characters better. It just felt like it made sense in that world, and like it was like a nice investigation. And so I'm kind of looking forward. Like I'm hoping there's that kind of variety. And again, you can see that coming over from the Professor Layton games, because like there was the puzzle segments, but then also like there weren't traditional like 5-act structure in that Layton game, right? It was like there were a couple major court scenes. And so it feels to me like what I think is interesting about this is that it's setting up the game so that there are investigation segments, but they don't necessarily have to be within a chapter, right? Like you could have a chapter that's potentially just all in court, which I'm sure they probably do, because that was like a thing in Layton. And then it's like you could have one where you're just investigating, or maybe there's a mix of both. So anyway, for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm like, I don't know where it's going, and that's exciting. Like most Ace Attorney games, when I play them, I'm like, I know where this is going, but I'm like, I don't know where this is going. Though I do see cool breadcrumbs dropping. As a history nerd, the Japan-Russia stuff and all this is real fucking cool. And like England, Japan, and all that shit, I'm just like, this is a really interesting time period to set your game in, and I'm digging it. So yeah, Also, Kazuma's theme is the fucking best. I want to listen to that on repeat.
Yeah.
His theme is so good. Anyway, all right. Let's
By the way, I need to like take that code and like put it on my Switch so I can actually like listen to the music on repeat.
Yeah, do it. I started one more game, the Artful Escape, which released just recently, and also on Game Pass. This game is fucking sick. So this is like a platformer guitar game, but released by Annapurna Interactive, but it's developed by this called Beethoven and Dinosaur. Great company name. It's literally just an image of Beethoven and a dinosaur, and I love it. But it's made by one of the members of the Galvatrons, which I guess is this like pop electro Australian band who was like active for like a decade. I think they like left in 2017 or something like that. And so he really wanted to make this this game, and like the best way I can sort of describe the game is like it's like a rock opera. It's like the story of how David Bowie found Ziggy Stardust. I think that's how the developer actually describes it. It's like about an artist finding and embracing a stage persona, and it's really cool. The music's fucking awesome. He's like, you basically play as this kid who's like the nephew of a basically Bob Dylan character. So like the town all expects him. You know what? This was actually I picked up this game because I was like, this would be a fun palate cleanser. It's only like a couple hours long, and you know I'm gonna jump into Yakuza Like a Dragon next because I've given up on playing the rest of the Yakuza games because there's not enough life. I'm just gonna jump into this one. Fuck it, I'm done. It's like there's too many. I played Kiwami. I know the story of those guys ish. I'm done. I'm just gonna someday perhaps I'll play the others, but I'm like, let's go with Like a Dragon because I hear it's great and I want an RPG. But I thought this would be nice, and it's set in Colorado, just like fucking Wasteland 3 was. So I was like, what a different setting of Colorado for this one. Gorgeous game. Oh my god. It reminds me of Oxenfree in its presentation in some ways, but except that the backgrounds, I would actually argue, are far more gorgeous in this game. Like the background artwork that was done in this is unbelievable. Like the character animations are that kind of like papery look, you know, where like like it's like you can really tell where the joints are in the elbows, like they don't, like, you know what I mean, like it's like that 2D style. And no one has eyes. Lots of glasses in this game. They're all wearing glasses and shit. I don't know, it's just a weird thing I noticed. But it also has incredible voice talent in it. Like Lena Headey's in it, you know, from Game of Thrones, Cersei. Carl Weathers is in it, and he is awesome. Like, you could tell when he arrives, his voice is so good. Jason Schwartzman's in it. Like, and they use them all so well, too. Like, it's really great. Like, the voice acting is stellar, beautifully cinematic in so many ways, but then also fun. Like, the platforming bits are genuinely thrilling because, like, you have this mechanic of, like, you can play your guitar, like, the entire way as you're running. And so, like, you know, he's, like, this, like, you know, nephew of this Bob Dylan-like character. The whole town expects him to be the next big folk guitarist, but like folk music isn't his calling, right? And so he's just like really obsessed with sci-fi and like fucking just crazy rocks, like pop operas. And then he goes on this, anyway, you go on a crazy journey and it gets fucking freaky in the coolest ways. The visuals in this are sick, and I like can't recommend this game enough. Just beautiful, just fantastic sounding, really fun guitar stuff that you do. Not particularly challenging yet by any stretch of the imagination, but more just about this really fun exploration. It's like playing a Wes Anderson movie, mixed with mixed with, what else would I mix it with? Mixed with Rocket Man, I guess, you know, like it's that kind of like mixture. It's just really, it's really fucking cool. It's on Game Pass, so like, go to town.
As you went, the fly just came in. I could see it on my screen.
Yeah, it just hit me right in the face. I'm like, God damn it. So yeah, Artful Escape. I did notice it stuttered a little bit on my Xbox Series X, which I was like, because there was a pretty.
It does not look like
moment.
A game that should tax that.
Well, when you play it, you'll see. I thought that too.
Hold on,
yeah, you should. You really should play it because I think you'll really enjoy it.
Listen, I'm going to do a Game Pass month. I'm thinking it's probably going to go on that list.
Yeah, because it's like 4 hours, right? Like you might as well.
I can squeeze it in.
Exactly. And because my thing is like, at first I was a little confused though when I saw that, like it was like a slight moment of slowdown. Only one little moment, but it was at a particular moment that was like insane. But I did notice a slight slowdown. I was like, weird. But anyway, that's that. So anyway, that was the Artful Escape. Check it out on Game Pass. or other places probably, but I didn't research it beforehand. Okay. So why don't we move on to our topic for this week, which is food and games.
Yummy, yummy.
This was a joke that Paula said because she's got like 1,000 photos from Cafe and Enchanté.
Cafe Pain Chante, you pronounced
Pain
it wrong.
Chante, yeah, that's right.
Pain
But then I was like, why don't we actually talk about this? Because I think it's actually a pretty interesting subject. Because food is, as we know, essential. Keeps us alive. Little known fact. And it seems to be having a bit of a, dare I say, resurgence in games as of late. I mean, there was a period of time where, food in games was the turkey you pick up to heal yourself, right? Like, I mean, for a long time, that's what it was. And I would really love to know who was the first person who thought of that as an idea. Like, why was it turkey? But anyway, I know in Japan it wasn't. It was other things. But at least in the West, we're like, turkey, that makes the most sense. So I thought what we could do today is maybe talk a bit about the history of food and games. Talk about why the fuck do we have food and games? And then Paula, I also think, has lots of notes about this. So she'll take us on a bit of an odyssey as well. Yeah. Should we start maybe with the history of food and games?
Take it away, Alex, because I think you're the only one who actually researches this.
Okay, fair. Well, I'll go a little quickly. So, like, when it comes to food in games, as I mentioned, the kind of earliest sort of things we can look to is stuff like Streets of Rage and Castlevania and whatnot, and fighting games, right? And in fighting games, food was the pickup that healed you. And even in early like CRPGs, that was kind of the thing, right? Like they started very much as healing items. And so honestly, what they were was kind of meaningless. They were mostly just like representations. But then you also have things like Pac-Man, right? Which is very clearly based off of food, but not necessarily about food, and actually brings in an interesting thing. I want to talk a little bit later. I read a really good thing about like gender and food when it comes to games, and there's some cool stuff about it. There's a really interesting take on food in the video game industry, which I would like to get everyone's thoughts on, but we'll touch on that later. So just you wait. And then as we move along, food and games shifts a little bit, right? When you have the introduction of farming games, right? Farming simulators, Harvest Moon. I mean, Rune Factory comes way later, but like, you've got all these sort of like, and then Stardew Valley, right? Eventually, that's way down the line. But you can sort of look at those farming simulators and their rise, and then Cooking Mama, which we cannot talk about food and games without talking about Cooking Mama. Cooking Mama.
Exactly.
Yeah, which I think, frankly, made food in games a thing. Like it was like beforehand it was like periphery, right? Like you were farming, but even in games like Harvest Moon and even in Stardew Valley, really the emphasis isn't really on making food from it, right? Sometimes you do to befriend or woo a lover, but arguably it was the farming process. And so Cooking Mama was really about the cooking process, right? So then you had these two separate things and these two separate fields. And what's interesting is that after games like Cooking Mama, where you see most food in games is actually in mobile games. And this is where the gender stuff actually comes in a little bit, because there's a really interesting article that talks about how, like, even when Pac-Man was created, the man, when he was creating it, he actually, like, he talks about this in his interviews where he says, like, well, I was thinking to myself, like, I want to make my game appeal to more than just like men. I want to appeal to women and children. And he expressly said, food, that's something that appeals. And so he wanted to create it based around that kind of idea, which is fascinating. And it extends onward into games like Cooking Mama, and it extends into the concept of casual games versus, core games kind of thing. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself because I do want to talk about that later. But then you hit into the mobile space, where we get games like Candy Crush, Cookie Clicker, where we get like lots of food-based games, right, that kind of explode onto the mobile area, and I would argue are still there. Remember Farmville? So I remember. Yeah, everyone just had yeah, right. You're like, as you like flash back to Facebook. But I would say around 2016-ish, maybe even a bit earlier than that, there was this sudden influx of like very serious food in games, right? I mean, we look at Monster Hunter World, right? Whoa, big intense on that. Final Fantasy 15 with this cooking and whatnot. Breath of the Wild, obviously. And like a lot of these RPG games, I mean, Yakuza 6 even, it has real photos of food in it. But suddenly I feel like around that time, we see food become something that is like an integral part of the game, or at least a very intense mini game. Yeah, because I wouldn't say it's integral, but it's a very a well thought out part of it. So anyway, that's like my really abbreviated history of food and games, and obviously there are major outliers, but yeah.
And as a tiny sort of look into the future of food in video games, what twigged in my memory while you were talking is a game that's been teased for PlayStation 5 called Gnaw, Play With Your Food, which is described on its website, which you can see at https://food.game, imaginatively titled, an interactive exploration into the aesthetics of food, 20 plus goal-free edible vignettes.
Oh, interesting.
And fun fact, this is published by Panic, the people behind the upcoming little handheld whose name I've forgotten with the crank.
Oh,
goodness gracious me.
The Playdate.
That's the one. Oh, I'm not very well at all.
That's all right. That's okay. But it's like, yeah, because even these days now you see people like it's so popular to make the food from games, right? Like there's this transition from like also like let's try to make games from Breath of the Wild recipes and whatnot and stuff like that.
The Gnaw is almost like the purest distillation of food as art rather than food as sustenance, in the sense that you can't do anything besides look at that food. Like you can interact with it in every way other than the way that food is meant.
Yeah. Like
from an evolutionary perspective to be interacted with. Yeah. And I think that's super interesting.
So
not that the game will be interesting, but like I think that as a concept's quite interesting.
Me too. So Paula, what are some of the things you wanted to touch on for this topic?
Okay, so first of all, disclaimer: I've been introduced to the activity or art called as cooking since I was like 4 or 5 years old. So one of the things I always pay attention to is like the food displayed like in video games, because on some visual novels like Enchanté or Paintanté, they made it look like fantastic. And one of the things that I've always like struggled with a little bit is like overall like presentation of the dish. So they're pretty much like a lot of video games pretty much gave me ideas on how to improve my cooking. So I'm always like investigating and taking notes and stuff like that.
Can I ask a quick question before you go? Who introduced you to like, cooking when you were young?
My father, because each
that wasn't
weekend,
the answer you were expecting. Sorry, go on.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah,
also, you got to remember, we live in very culturally different areas. Sorry, go ahead, Paula.
Right. So each weekend, ever since I was young, father pretty much like taught me like things about cooking, like from chopping the veggies or like cleaning a specific veggies. And as I grew older, I was like allowed to, I don't know, fry stuff. I actually used the oven and stuff like that. So yeah, like every weekend when I lived at my parents' house, it was like weekend. That means the whole family is cooking together, and that means Paula is getting some training on the kitchen too.
Nice. So there's a real culture of like family together, like cooking together. Would you say? Or
I wouldn't say it is common by any means.
I meant like in your household. Sorry.
But yeah, like in my house in particular, there's like this thing about cooking together. Even when they have like, I want to say like family or family friends visiting, we do stuff together. Like whenever like one of my friends comes into my house, we would try to make omurice too or something like that. Nice. We actually like try it over and over again until we perfected it. Or in the case like at my boyfriend's house, one of the things we do like usually like on Fridays is like we do like a variety like of stuff. So you can like make like your own little lunchbox or bento kind of thing. So for me, cooking usually means like working together with someone, unless it is on the place I currently live at, because everyone like cooks at whatever hour they can eat, because we have like fairly different schedules. I still like cook food for everyone from time to time, but more often than not, everyone does their own thing.
Could I ask too? Because
So
now I'm curious about everyone, and then I want to jump back to get too. Because like for me personally, like when like my introduction to cooking didn't really happen for me when I was young. Like it wasn't really a thing. Like my mom very much cooked, right? Like my dad can cook breakfast and like 1 or 2 meals. And like I would help her occasionally, but it was like a very specific helping, right? Like I was never really taught how to like really make a meal. Like I also basically just knew how to make breakfast. You know, like I could make really good eggs essentially until I was in my mid-20s and I was like, fuck this, I gotta learn how to cook. And like I went like hard. I bought like a fancy chef's cookbook, right? Like I mean like one of the ones that's like not your everyday cooking. And I used that. And so I cooked like really hard dishes in order to learn how to cook. Right, because I was like, you know what? I never cook those dishes anymore because I don't need to. You know what I mean? I can do other things, but like, I had to really teach myself. And I'm curious, Rick, what about for you? Like, what was?
There's a lot of parallels there. Like, growing up, it was my mum who did all the cooking. My dad could feed himself, but he couldn't feed himself well. But my mum was very eager to sort of share the cooking for sort of cultural reasons. So I learned a lot of dishes growing up. I went to university knowing enough. And I've sort of gradually, bit by bit, picked things up. So there's this dichotomy in my culinary life, if I can be that wanky, where I can and occasionally do cook quite fancy, cook quite extravagant, but generally because it's just me, I will cook rather utilitarian. So I do a lot of salads at the moment, and that's literally spinach, beetroot, goat's cheese, protein if I'm feeling hungry, and a dressing. And there's no real effort goes into any of that prep wise. And then dinner will be chicken and vegetables. They either all go in the air fryer or it goes in the oven. So very little effort happens on my part. The oven does all the heavy lifting. But while I don't necessarily give it all the time and attention I might otherwise, I can. And I definitely appreciate that side of cooking. And all the, in terms of what you say, Paula, about it sort of being a shared time. Because certainly on family occasions, whenever I'm home, when we get together for Christmases and Easters and stuff like that, the cooking and the eating together and the sharing that experience is a big part of that. So I definitely recognize that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, that is very similar to even when I talk about, because like
it's like, almost a bleed of the two in a way.
Yeah, because when I think about it, I was like you a couple years ago, right? Like I knew enough how to cook because my mom made sure I knew how to do things. It's just like, you know, I wasn't like making lots of crazy stuff, right? But it was like, yeah, when you're alone, the fuck man, I don't have time to make crazy shit, you know what I mean? Like, or like there's no need to, but then now like
the cost benefit isn't there is how I'd put it.
Yeah.
Like it's not worth the effort for me for how much difference it will make to the experience of eating it.
Yeah and it's interesting sorry, Paula.
I was going to say, like, for me, the amount of effort I put into a dish, it actually makes the difference like big time. Because I really enjoy seeing like this plate of food that has like all these different like shapes and colors and kind of like looks pretty. It's very much like, oh, I know I could have done this like in less time with the same ingredient, but it wouldn't look as pretty. It wouldn't make me as happy. So there's that little like, that there's like that little aspect of like self-love that I pretty much had to learn the hard way. Pretty much like, hey, I appreciate myself. I'm gonna like try to do like these, maybe not fancy, but something a little bit more elaborate because it's like I should take care of myself in that way.
That is interesting. I like that. Okay, cool. Sorry, I just wanted to know like our sort of traditions with it, because like now that I live with my partner and whatnot, like I very much plan meals on a weekly basis, and like, you know what I mean, like creating, getting the ingredients. Like I've turned into like, oh, I know what groceries I get. You know what I mean? I'm an adult now.
Yep.
You know, it felt like that feeling of where it's like I make a grocery list and I'm like, and the grocery list is like each of my meals uses ingredients. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like all the ingredients that I buy for that week are for multiple meals. And it's just like, that way I use it all. Like, it's like I've learned.
And you've got the overlaps planned out. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Right? Like it took time. So why don't you keep going then, Paula? Because we interrupted you in I want you to get through your notes.
It's okay. We went on a tangent from cooking in video games to cooking in real life, which I'm perfectly fine with.
This is the How Long to Eat podcast now. It's gone.
Ta-da! So one particular thing that I've noticed about food in video games, like the most common way to put food in video games is making it a healing item. But as you say, like in Stardew Valley, you have to grow food, but not for yourself, but to sell it. which was another like pretty interesting angle on that part. But you can also make preparations with the food and sell it for more money, or like use it for, because you get fatigue in that game. So if you really want like to go into the mines and stuff like that, you might want to bring some food with you. But also there's, for example, Breath of the Wild, that you can eat the food, you can cook the food and make like health recovery items or like stat boosting items. But you can also use it as bait, not only like for the animals around you, but for the enemies too. And each individual animal has like a set of food that they actually like. So if you're like hunting a specific kind of animal or a specific kind of fish, you can use food to get more food. Or like just distract the enemies and run away if you're not really feeling like fighting.
Yeah, I saw something interesting too that talked about how Breath of the Wild's systems, like you were mentioning, like Stardew Valley, again, it's like focusing on the farming part, a little bit on the cooking, but like really it's about like farm, maybe follow a recipe, like specific instructions to make something new. Breath of the Wild really has that find your ingredients, then create, see how you did, repeat your process, right? Go again. Like it's really about like the experimentation of like, you have to think to yourself like what might go together well, right? Which is like that sort of move. And like I feel like that's actually a level in like, even when cooking in real life, like I don't know, you start by following instructions, right? You follow recipes.
Yeah.
Eventually you learn like, oh wait, there's actually fundamentals to cooking that if I know these specific things, I can create my own dishes, right? And like I think Breath of the Wild's neat because sometimes people will tell you things like, oh, try throwing a berry in there, or try doing this, right? Or like something like that. And like you can like listen and like experiment. And so it like more mimics that kind of, I don't know, very basic foundational elements of cooking very interestingly, I think.
Yeah, and the fun thing about Breath of the Wild is you don't have like a proper cookbook with all the recipes. You pretty much like have to write them if it's something like more complicated than just throwing a couple of berries like in a frying pan or something like that. But when you're like walking around Hyrule, if you go to the stables or some of the stores, they have a recipe on the wall.
Yeah,
I love that. It was like, oh, I would never have thought of throwing these and these together and making these like in game. So yeah, that's Breath of the Wild, and I have quite a list of games here.
Breath of the Wild.
Of course. I actually knew I would have to mention Breath of the Wild, so I was like, oh, maybe I should talk about this much home playing.
I can't laugh because I'm going to revert to type in a couple of minutes as well.
Yeah, I know you are. I saw you type it.
Yep. The other games that feature food like, well, prominently are like, well, one of them was Cooking Mama, which, by the way, for everyone who doesn't like a leak about what Cooking Mama is, go watch Jaden Animations. There's a video on Cooking Mama, and it is amazing. It is chupkiss, pun intended.
Nah, I approve of that. I like that.
Or like one of the things that people didn't like about Breath of the Wild is how you could just eat all the food and there's nothing stopping you. In Genshin Impact, as much shit I give to that game, there's a hunger meter on that game, so you can't eat everything in your inventory until you beat that boss. No, sir. And the other thing is that each character has like a specialty kind of thing. So when you prepare your dishes, if you use like specific characters, you get like a special version of that dish. Or you can even get like a second portion because like the character knows how to prepare it, so it's less wasteful with the materials. That was kind of neat. That was very neat, actually. And it has like the same like collecting loop that Breath of the Wild has.
Nice.
And the other, and going back to Cooking Mama, like that game was, I need to play that game. Like it looks like a lot of fun.
Oh, have you never played Cooking Mama? Oh,
I never played it. I owe myself to play it.
I love Cooking Mama.
The game I played though is Overcooked.
Overcooked, yes.
Yeah, especially like the second one we were playing with my boyfriend, and we're a mess in that game. Like, I also like listened to my sister play like a couple of months ago. At this point, she pretty much had to rage quit that game because of how stressing playing with so many players was, because she was playing with 2 other friends. Though I have to say, that game is not for the faint of heart because like cooking on a timer in real life is already stressing as shit.
Mm-hmm.
Cooking on a timer on a video game is I don't have an onion. You have an onion. Give me that fucking onion so I can make this dish. But then I have to throw you like that dish so you can like put it into the like conveyor belt thing at the end and pretty much I call it a day with that.
It actually really does mimic, I think, quite beautifully the stress of cooking, honestly. Like,
yes.
Especially when you get to a level of cooking where you're pretty good at it. And so you start to, like you're planning a meal, right? So that everything comes out at the same time. And so you're juggling multiple things. And then you're like, I forgot to fucking salt it. Like that moment, right? Where you're like, fuck. And like it's that moment of where you're just going and shit's flying everywhere. Like, oh yeah, that's me. I'm a messy cooker sometimes.
And in particular, I have had the chance to participate like stuff where we're cooking stuff for a lot of people, like big events. But we actually had to prepare meals like for a kind of like restaurant kind of thing. And being on the kitchen or being on the floor, I think I'd rather be on the floor like serving the clients because the kitchen gets too chaotic. And on the other event, we have I guess like the meal was scheduled to start at a certain time for like groups of, I don't know, 50 plus people at a time. Jesus, you don't want to serve 50 plus plates of food. You don't want to watch the dishes that come from those people. So overcooking that sense really mimics how fucking stressful being at the kitchen is at those times.
And at the same time, too, though, if you get into a flow, God, there's like an adrenaline rush, right? Because like I worked in a restaurant too, and like, man, when you have everything working just the way you need it, and you're like banging out orders, and you've got it going, there's such a like, fuck yeah! You're like, it's that, like, right? And same in Overcooked, when you get like a really good thing going, you're just like, we are the masters of cooking.
Yeah, and when everything is like over, when you pass that level, it's like that sense of relief that is like, yes, I can die now.
You can die now. I did.
I'm really happy. So yeah, that was like a lot of fun about Overcooked. We still have to like go back to the game because I don't think we went like too far like in the story or the map.
You could say the cooking is not over.
The cooking is not over. I'm Rick.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, there you go. Took a second, but yeah.
That was the thinking.
Nice.
Yeah, like the other instances of food I've seen that are like less about the cooking and more about aesthetics in Bento. Because you make the little lunch books and thinking of like, because you're cooking like these, I guess like this cat that is also a mom, the story takes you like from, I guess, the early stage of the kitten she's caring for until like the kitten grows older. So even like the puzzles get bigger and bigger and more complicated as time goes on because it complements the story really well in that sense.
Yeah, the cooking contextualizes the puzzles.
Yep. And that is beautiful. Ooh. And I'm trying to see if I have like a very like in-depth kind of like cooking thing over here, but I think nope.
I was gonna say that actually brings, I think, to a nice moment, if I can jump in for a second, because what I want to talk about, because when you look at Inbento too, Inbento tells the story, right, of which I think is like, at least particularly in like Canada, US, maybe too in the UK, I don't know, in other parts of the world, but like in that game, it's very much the mom teaching the child how to cook, right? And so like I feel as though like, anyway, cooking in general is quite gendered, right? Like, who are the top chefs in the world? Dudes, right? But then who does the majority of cooking for sustenance in like households? It tends to be the women of the house, right? Like that tends to be where it gets done. But then that's often viewed as like, that's just cooking. Do you know what I mean? Like there's like that weird sort of thing, but I don't want to get into that right now. But
there's playing and there's playing, there's cooking and there's cooking.
Yeah. Right. And so what I think is interesting is like for a long time, games with cooking were marketed or are like major, like look at Cooking Mama. We know who Cooking Mama is marketed towards, right? Despite the fact that
Mamas.
it's fucking awesome game. Yeah, right? Like it's super great. But we know that it's marketed and like they're trying to push it towards this thing of like, oh, it's for women to play, which is like such a weird notion in general, right? And it caused a lot of problems early on in the industry too, because it would be seen if you like those games. Like there's one of the articles I read was really interesting. It's on Eater, and it's from a collection, a book called Women on Food, and one woman, she did like a really interesting look at a huge deep dive into food and video games. It's very, very good, and talks about how like at Riot Games there was, we remember a while back there was that thing where like they were viewing like women were often passed up for promotion because they would say like, oh, they're not core gamers enough, like they're into casual games, like
I don't know about in the past. I mean, the reporting's still ongoing on that. It sounds like it's still
yes.
like
Actually,
thing.
you know what? Maybe it's more current now even than it was needed, because at the time, this article came out in 2019. So the fact that it was even talked about then, and we know now, it's a big problem. But I don't know. I'm just
that sound you can hear is Paula looking for said article.
Oh, yeah,
you have a very clicky keyboard.
Later. Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot the keyboard was mechanical.
That's okay. Never play the food. But yeah, I mean, I don't even know necessarily want to go. It's just like, wait, what did that call that article? The soft sexism of food and video games. Oh, that's not what the article is called. But anyway, it's called Miss Pac-Man's Revenge, which I think is a great for it, right? And yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting because it brings up this sort of discussion of like, why was it labeled that way? And there's a cultural influence on saying that like, oh, women should be doing cooking, which I do think is changing, right? And I think like we talked about the introduction in things like Breath of Wild, the pure like intensity in Final Fantasy 15 of the food. Like the developers went on road trips and tried to cook the food themselves and see what looked good and what tasted good, and that's how they decided if it was going to go in the game or not. Like they gave
that is such a good way of justifying holidays and company time. I love that.
Yes. Yes.
And so like, I read an excellent thing on Monster Hunter World where they talked about how they're like, you know, in like they're talking about the way they did the food. And they're like, listen, so like, and like they're such nerds, and I love it. And they're like, you know, with the food, it's like you can't it's like, you know, you can't taste it, right? So you can't rely on the senses. But like we realized that like, oh, okay, so like we actually have to like simplify and exaggerate portions of it. Like for instance, we need like steam coming off of it so you feel the sensation, or watch as the fat drips off it. And like they're talking about the way that they, and like they're so into it, like the way they visually extend the food to make it like aesthetically appeal to your palate. So like I do think fortunately we're seeing a shift in the ways that we view food in games, and like I hope we're starting to break down these like gender kind of constructions that we made and recognize that it's like, no, food is excellent. Because like the article's thrust is essentially we should have more food in games, and I'm like, I agree.
Yep. I agree.
As do, and this is maybe a cheeky little segue, the fine folk over at Vanillaware, who have prominently featured food in their games for a long time. We've all heard of the yakisoba pan and the Hamburg steaks.
Which I will say, the
like
yakisoba pan did look fantastic. Even if he said it too much, it did look great.
Right. Paula and I have been talking about prepping our own.
Tastes fantastic too, so.
Oh, I can't wait. But
yeah, because I made yakisoba, but I haven't like put it like in a piece of bread yet. But
I haven't even done that. I'm a yakisoba virgin. That felt really weird to say. I take that back. Yep. I don't want that out in the open. Oh my god. Oh.
I don't know why that did sound weird.
You want to edit this episode? Because I'm gonna leave that in. If it's my turn.
Yeah, Rick, you have to decide. Who wants the privileges for this one?
Oh Christ!
You're right.
Anyway,
though. Vanillaware has excellent looking food. They're like Ghibli levels of food,
and they've been doing it as far back as Odin Sphere. But the interesting thing is, they always try and make it look incredible, but they do it in very different ways. So I can't speak to Grim Grimoire because I haven't played that yet. In Odin Sphere, there was like a stat boosting, like a permanent stat boosting component to the food. So it's something that you do sort of between combat missions. Then you go to Muramasa. And it's more a case of like picking up the turkeys, the expendables type of thing. But the interesting thing with the food in Muramasa was you had like a belly meter. So there were potions which you could have that would fill up almost no belly. And there are dishes that would give you bigger health and like temporary stat boosts, but they would limit your ability to bump your health up and top it up later on in the fight. So it was an extra sort of element for you to weigh up in combat, but it also gave you an element as well of preparation between battles and another thing to think about within that game's systems. And then in Dragon's Crown, which is a Golden Axe sort of 2D beat 'em up sort of thing, they instead incorporate the food as a mini game. And anyone who's listening, go and sort of Google Dragon's Crown food, because the screen that minigame works on is mouth-wateringly good.
Nice.
And you have like this minigame of throwing different stuff in the pot as a random minigame that pops up to sort of replenish various stats of your characters when you're doing sort of some of the longer dungeon raids. And it's just interesting that they implement it in different ways, but always with the mindset of this food should look fucking incredible and make you want to pause our game to go and get food.
Yeah.
And I just sort of love that as an outlook. I think it's really cool.
It also makes me think, like, you remind me a little bit. I do find it funny how food is often seen as like it increases your health, which like makes sense. But also like in Wasteland 3,
I mean, you can see where that comes from.
Yeah, in Wasteland 3, for instance, though, a Snickers bar increases your health, and I'm like, that's dubious. You know?
Yeah.
Like I like games sometimes where they'll take foods that are like sometimes Fallout games do this. Some games do this in general, where it's like the food is like they usually do it with booze, where it's like, oh, it'll increase this, but your perception will get fucked, right? Like you'll get shaky. Or like I would love to see Snickers. It's like you eat it and you're gonna get like a combat speed boost or something, but like you're gonna crash hard in like 20 seconds and you'll have like a minus combat speed boost. You know what I mean? Show me the sugar.
It should do like Metal Slug, where it just makes you comically fat.
That'd be great.
Oh my god.
But like I kind of wish that would happen. I guess that's more The Sims. I can't believe we haven't talked about The Sims, but that's all other thing. Sorry, Paula.
Like another game that has kind of like food items, that is some of the Pokemon games, like the third generation ones, that is Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, and the remakes, and then the fourth generation games that are Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. They have
and the remakes
these like
upcoming.
Yep. They have like these kind of like cubes or puffins that are meant to be like made by the player, which, by the way, depending on how well you do, like in the blending minigames for the cube or the cooking minigames for the puffins, that is like the actual quality of the food you're making. And they do have like a permanent kind of like effect on the Pokemon you give them to, because it affects the stats they have like for the Pokemon contest. Like, I don't know, like if you use like these kind of ingredients, it will make your Pokemon like look pretty super pretty or stuff like that. And I kind of like that aspect of it. Or if you give it like this other kind of berry to your Pokemon, then its claws are gonna be like tougher. So that I feel like that was like a cool way to use food. And then Pokemon X and Y came in, and they use like these little snacks to raise the Pokemon's affection along with the minigames they had. And that's the way you get Sylveon. By the way, these little Poke Cubes you give to your Pokemon are the only way you can evolve what was the name? Like the ugly fish Pokemon in...
I don't remember, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it starts with Phi. I'm pretty sure it starts with Phi. But
take your word for it.
But by the way, that stupid rare Pokemon, it only appears like in 6 tiles of a specific area of the game, and the tiles reset each time you restart the game. Like turn off the console and turn it on back again. That was stupid. But you have to raise to the maximum like the beauty value of the Pokemon, and it will evolve into Milotic, which was like the prettiest Pokemon in that game, like for contest standards. And then you have the evolution food item, that is like the tart apple and the sweet apple, because there's this one Pokemon that is a dragon grass type called Applin. It is a worm and an apple.
Oh yeah, right. Fuck man, they ran out of ideas.
It is a worm and an apple. And depending on it is like a little dragon thing that lives in this apple, and depending the kind of apple you give it like to live in, it will evolve either on a flapple if you give it a tart apple, or in an Appleton if you give it a sweet apple. The fact thing about Appleton is that it seems people used to eat like crust of the skin because it tasted like apple pie or something like that.
Makes sense.
It was really fact. But still, I dropped a pencil. I don't know where the fuck it went, so I'm gonna look it like
forever.
later.
It went into the pencil zone.
Forever. And the other like places I've seen food like used like in other ways, one of which is Slime Rancher, because you actually have to feed the slimes for them to give you plorts and sell the plorts, and then you're rich. The thing is, each slime has like a preferred food item. Like the fluorescent slimes will eat fruit, but if you give it like cube fruit, they produce like twice the plorts. And then you have the tabby slime. That is a slime with cat ears and a tail, and it is adorable. And it will eat only hens because it is a carnivore. But you can give it like it is a stony hen. It looks like a chicken, but like with like stone pebbles on its feathers, something like that. And that will give you like double of the plorts as well. But then you have the same tabby cat who can wreak havoc on your farm and pretty much steal a food item and leave it wherever. And if a slime eats like a plort from another slime, it will become a largo. And if it eats yet another plort, it will become a tar. A tar eats slimes. You don't want that. And wrapping things up a little bit because
Oh yeah, sorry, we've been going for
this
ages.
has been like a long discussion. You have Bad Appleverse, where the golden apple is a MacGuffin. If you eat the golden apple, you can go back to the world of the living. You have the overall, like all of the games that I've seen have like very good looking food, especially Café Enchanté. And finally, I would be kind of like disappointed if you don't recognize this quote. You still can't see the rice. You begin to suspect that your bowl is a portal to the meat dimension. The amount of meat contained within this bowl is truly staggering. In order to finish this bowl, you must have the understanding of your limits, knowledge to control your pace, courage to face this unrelated tide of beef, and the diligence to persevere against this colossal challenge. All these traits as necessary to master the rainy day Mega People Challenge. And that is Persona 4.
Yeah, okay, good. I was like, that's a Persona 4. I was like, yeah. At first, I was like, the fuck's she talking about? And then I was like, then like some deep, deep part of me like unlocked my Vita memories of like Persona 4. And I was like, yes! I love that
I had
game.
way too much of like an emphasis on beating that beef bowl in my campaign, I have to be honest.
Yeah.
It occupied way too much of my mind considering what else was going on in that game.
Well, damn.
Right?
That is food and games. We talked about so much. I frankly think we could have talked longer about it too, but we've already got on for ages on this. Because
I'm pleasantly surprised.
there's a lot more to talk about with food, you know? Like food, yeah, it's more of a thing than you would imagine. So yeah, why don't we, I think we're going to skip our question again this week. Sorry, there's no time. We're already here.
Yep.
So here's the thing. I am still thoroughly confused as to who's editing this episode, which means
I've taken the liberty, without accepting any responsibility of this week's edit, I've taken the liberty of picking the randomizer.
All right.
I can tell you that this week it is Dark Chronicle, aka Dark Cloud 2 for the PlayStation 2.
Dark Chronicle.
Dark what?
Dark Chronicle
Dark
sounds familiar.
Chronicle?
Is that the one with the little
It's the one with the woman with the pigtails and the guy with the wrench.
Yeah,
on
because
the
that's
cover.
that one. It's a level 5 game, right? Yeah.
Correct, Mundo. Yeah, I think it's a sequel to Dark Cloud.
No. It's a sequel.
Question mark.
Oh,
Wait,
it's
Dark
a sequel
Chronicle?
to Dark Chronicle.
I see a guy with a wrench and a girl
There's two of them.
with red hair and a sword.
Right. But this game is Dark Chronicle, aka Dark Cloud 2.
Oh, is that what it is? Oh, okay.
So I think it's that way around. Yeah, we can't even agree on the name. How on earth are we going to get the time?
Did it have different names in different areas? Oh, it must have.
I fucked if I know.
Huh. Okay, because I have Dark
that's the
Cloud
one.
on my PS4. I think I have Dark Cloud 2 as well.
Ooh.
A spiritual seizure. Oh yeah, it was called Dark Cloud 2 here in North America.
Right.
It was called
Oh.
Dark Chronicle in Japan and in Europe.
Yeah, I didn't even notice Dark Cloud, so I just knew it was Dark Cloud and Dark Chronicle.
Well, isn't that interesting? Ain't that interesting? I've heard that
It is.
I retired the first one, but I heard that.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, well, just because I never actually played it. I just had it and was like, it's never happening. But I hear it's interesting. It's got like weird like building mechanics in it as well, and whatnot. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not very confident because I know that this is a biggin.
The hustle is on, folks.
Yeah, it's hustle time. Yeah, weirdly enough, it was Dark Chronicle 2 in North America and South Korea.
Oh, okay.
Why only there? I don't know.
I don't know.
North America and best Korea.
Best Korea, yes. Let's see here. Yeah. People really like this game, I remember.
Oh, there's a PlayStation 4 version of this?
It was ported. It's not an actual.
It's the one you can buy on the PSN that's basically an emulation.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
It's not a remaster of any sense of the word.
God, no. That would require effort.
That would require effort.
Yeah, there we go.
That would require effort.
That's great. We both know exactly what's going on with this. We're like, yeah, there's no fucking way that's happening. Okay, well, I don't know. I'm gonna say, I think it's somewhere like I'm gonna say like 35 for main. I think 43 for main. That's 34. 43 for main plus, and like fuck, I hate this so much. I
feel this is
50 for
like a very long game.
100%.
Okay, I'm gonna say. Do I want to say 30 for main? Maybe that's undercutting it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's hard to because like was the first one a PlayStation 2 or was it a PlayStation 1 game?
It was a very early PlayStation 2 game. They're both PlayStation 2 games.
Gotcha. Right. Yeah.
It was like 01.
Oh yeah, the first one was 2000.
Oh, it's 2000.
Yeah, in Japan. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say I didn't think the PlayStation was even out. Or
yeah,
PS2
it was 2001
in Europe.
North America. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that tracks.
And then the other one, this game that we're talking about here, Dark Cloud 2, Dark Chronicle, was 2002 in Japan. Wow. Okay, that was a short turnaround. 2003 in North America, 2 years later.
Crikey.
Damn.
Okay, so I am going to break convention and I'm going to swing for the fences. So because when you go for a main and a main plus, you get a 3-hour buffer either way. Mm-hmm. I am going 52.5 for main, and I'm going 72.5 for main plus. I don't dare for this game. I do not know enough about it to go for the 100%, but that is what I'm going with.
That makes me uncomfortable.
You're always uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You can't Prices Right me every week, Alex.
I won't Prices Right you this week, but I will. I'm gonna shoot for the fences. I'm gonna go all out.
Ooh.
I'm gonna try to guess the 100%, and you're making me nervous. So I'm gonna change my scores, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna fail, but I'm gonna try. Okay. Let's see here. I'm gonna say 50.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna say I don't feel like it's 72. I'm gonna say 67. 67. Yeah, I think that's. I'm gonna say 67, and I'm gonna go gangbusters, and I'm gonna say 135 hours. That's how much.
Big boy hours. I mean, you basically Prices Righted me on the two that I.
Yeah,
did.
I did, but that's why I feel bad.
Yeah,
like,
you
know
did.
What? I'm gonna go for 100%. So I'm gonna see if I can go better on there. Paula, are you gonna change it up?
I'm still changing things up because I feel like it is a long game, but maybe not 130 hours long. I'm gonna say
I think
40 hours main, 55 hours main plus. Maybe I should have changed it like to 58 hours main plus. And 100% 95.
Because
I think that's maybe like 60 hours.
Because this game has procedurally generated
62
dungeons.
hours.
That's where I'm thinking this game probably has like a fuck ton of time on it.
Oh, I see. But what if I swing too high for the 100%? That's the thing that's worrying me.
Okay, I'll do 67 and a half hours.
I'm gonna say 185. I'm 105.
I can't even be judged. Yeah,
105
hours this time.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. All right, so Rick is at 52
What if
and a
I
half.
go 155? No, that would be too
Okay.
much.
Oh.
No. 105, maybe. Okay, let's go with it.
All right, so Rick has main 52 and a half, main plus 72 and a half. I have 50 hours for main, 67 hours and 30 minutes for main plus, 135 hours for 100%. Paula has 40 hours, 62 hours, and 105 hours. Let's see.
Oh, and poorly. I mean, even if you'd overshot, it wouldn't have happened for you. So I think you might have squeaked in, Alex. Let's have a look. So main story.
Seriously?
I'm juggling between two tabs. So main story, 51.5 hours.
Shit.
Which, in fact, Alex, if you just tell me where we're all at on that, I'm pretty certain Paula's blown it.
Okay, so wait.
Yep.
So what was the main?
So main is 51.5 hours.
Okay, you, me are in, but Paula's off. Yeah.
Main plus is 71.5 hours.
You've got it.
Oh.
Okay.
Come on.
Completion is 137 hours.
Are you kidding me?
So what needs to happen now is we need to have a rule where you can't just copy my time and blag points. This is not okay.
Yes.
You've like, what's the story? Is it the scorpion and the frog? You've piggybacked me into level pegging. This is unacceptable. What's that lemon man from Adventure Time?
Unacceptable. Yeah, but I could have lost it all. That's the thing. I gambled, bruh. I gambled on that 100.
You gambled on one and you stole on two. And I'm very salty about it.
Honestly, you know what my theory was? This is what went through my head. When you put the 72.5 hours, I was like, I bet you it's around double that for the 100. Because I was like, it's probably around there. So I was just like, let's try and see if it works. Rick is very upset right now.
I'm gonna go and lick my wounds is what I'm gonna do.
How did you know so well? That's great. You play this game?
I figured 50 to 55, 70 to 75.
Yeah.
Which is it's the only time I've ever used the half hours. And given how it's gone for me in context, it's probably the only time I ever will. Because I'm on a 2-point negative swing, basically.
Nice. Alrighty. Well, looks like this week has had a record moment for us where Rick and Alex are now tied at 87 points. Looks like that Switch OLED might not be in your hands.
Oh, now it's happening. Now that you've got a sniff at it, it's happening.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm kidding. Are you kidding me?
This
As if
rubbish.
that would happen.
This rubbish.
It's still 100.
And Paula's
points.
also playing.
I know. And Paula's here at 75. Paula's not that far behind, though, really. Paula's only 12 points behind. That's like 3 episodes potential. There, you never know.
Yeah. It's closer than she was a few episodes ago, in fairness.
All right. So
True.
that's it for this week. Tune in next week for more adventures with us all. Toodles.
Take it easy.
Bye.
I'm really upset.